Welcome everyone to the inaugural edition of Belong's Inclusive Mental Health Festival for what promises to be a fantastic day of programming around inclusive mental health. I just want to very quickly introduce myself and Belong, and then I'll pass it on to Lasya, who is the community manager at Belong and will walk us through the rest of the day. Belong is a platform that seeks to bring discrimination-free services to people who otherwise would face discrimination because of their identity, which is their gender, sexuality, race, religion, caste, disability, etc. Belong has been set up as a social venture last year, and it seeks to provide inclusive housing rentals, inclusive mental health services, inclusive literature through our book club, and also inclusive research, where it gathers researchers who are focused on these themes. We run our work in two different layers. There's a lot of community building that happens in the first layer, and we host a regular series of meetups, book readings, expert discussions, and so on and so forth. And then sitting on top of those community building activities are services that we put together. Mental health is a very, very sort of important part of our work. And that's why we put this mental health festival together. Now, I just want to spend a couple of times talking about the mental health festival and why we thought this would be a good idea. A lot of people, by virtue of their identity, face discrimination in different spheres of their life. It could be social interactions, it could be their jobs, education, even things like access to housing. Now, the discrimination that they face, both subtle and not so subtle, plays out in their minds and leads to fairly exacerbated mental health challenges that could range all the way from depression, anxiety, loneliness, frustration. And through the last 3 or 4 months that we've been focusing on this theme, it has become fairly clear that the current ecosystem of mental health therapy is not up to task. A lot of therapists in our country don't actually have expertise in this. A lot of people who face such bias don't know where to turn to. And we felt that actually having a day full of such conversations would be really helpful in spotlighting this issue. That's why we put this mental health festival together. And we're lucky to have a fantastic set of panelists who will walk us through different subtopics, a lot of interactive activities through the day. So again, thank you very much for attending. We will be taking breaks in between, so feel free to sort of step out if you need to. We're also streaming live on Facebook and are recording this, so you can also share this with your friends subsequently. Without too much deal, let me just pass it on to Lasya.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. Without much further delay, I'm just going to introduce our keynote speaker, Professor Ramaiah here. Thank you, Professor Ramaiah. Firstly, thank you so much for joining us today and for agreeing to do this for us. We really respect the work that you've done. And I'm just going to say a few words about Professor Ramaiah and just pass the mic on to him. So Professor Avatti Ramaiah is our keynote speaker. He's currently a professor at the Center for Social Exclusion and Inclusive Policies at the Tata Institute of Social Sciences in Mumbai. Professor Ramaiah has done extensive academic research on social stratification, social exclusion, and social justice, mainly focusing on caste and human rights issues. We are truly delighted to have you as our keynote speaker for the event, Ramaiah sir, and just passing this over to you. Please go ahead.
Okay, am I audible?
Yes, you are. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, good morning, everybody, and thank you so much, Belong team, for putting me in. Although it's very little time, I will try my best to share what I want to share in this about inclusive mental health. That is what the theme of the day. Now, as all you know, that health does not mean absence of illness as in deformities, but a complete physical, mental, and social well-being. That is how WHO defines health. So obviously, the mental health becomes a very, very important aspect of health. When you define what health is all about. Now, when you say mental health, we are basically talking about the health of the mind. Mental health basically means health of the mind. Is our mind healthy? How does one define whether our mind is healthy are not so healthy. The usual understanding is that the mind is able to understand realities based on certain very verifiable facts. Maybe if the mind is logical, rational, relying only on verifiable evidences and make judgment, probably we can come to the conclusion that the mind is healthy. But can mind be free from many things that happens, which the everyday life we get to see, and what we see also get registered in our probably chromosomes and DNA, and they become very much part of our life. And any future decisions we take, we pick up our experience we already had, which is stored in our DNA and chromosomes, and make judgment out of it. That means that what we stored in our mind is our database to whatever decisions we take in future. In that case, what kind of data we want to store in our mind and what kind of data we want to throw away. Data that disturb us will definitely should be discarded, and data that keeps us comfortable should be retained and probably reinforced. In a diverse society like ours, we have people belonging to various religions, various regions, speaking number of different languages, people following different cultures, and within religions you have a number of sects and groups and castes and subcastes, and each of these groups have different faith. You have any religion you can think of in the world, we have in India. That adds to the complexity, although it is a diversity, which is it's a great thing about our nation, but somehow we are not able to handle these diverse cultures. And so naturally, there is a hierarchy kind of a thing gets formed across religions, that my religion is superior to your religions, and your religion is superior to some other religion. So the religion is not taken on a horizontal way. It's always there is a hierarchy, there is a vertical formation of religion in terms of which is more powerful, which is more egalitarian, and there are a number of yardsticks to define which religion is better and which religion is not so better. I don't want to go into that debate because that itself will bring a lot of discomfort among us and will spoil our mental health. So when we say mental health, whether our mind is healthy or not, and the only yardsticks we have already is that whether the mind enjoys the freedom that it requires. Freedom of mind, a mind that can think on its own based on data which is verifiable data. Not it is a data about some myth making, some supernatural power. If you have to believe in supernatural power, probably we don't require Indian army. We can use that supernatural power to defeat any enemies from outside. So obviously that's not the case. The fact that we spend millions of rupees in our defense shows that these supernatural power cannot be relied on to defend the country when there is an attack from outside. The same logic applies when there are forces affecting individuals and communities within India. Again, you cannot rely on that supernatural power. So then what do you rely on? How will we live together? How will you value each other? It is only when we value each other, probably our mind can be healthy, our mental health status will be more stable and reliable. Almost the reason why we cannot rely much on supernatural power When I say supernatural power, I am saying that, okay, God will come to our rescue. Unfortunately, we do not have one God to whom we all can approach and make our request to help to protect us. Unfortunately, we have too many gods, and too many gods, unfortunately, are not in agreement with each other in terms of what their power is, what they are for, and how do they want to protect humanity. Each religion has its own faith, and they don't agree with the approach and faith the other religions follow. You have a religion, you have a one God religion, you have one messenger of God. There are religions which say they are messenger of God, the prophet of God. And then you also have a religion, there are millions of God. And interestingly, every God claims that they created the universe, they created the human being. So this difference in the basic understanding of how universe is created, how human beings are created, is the sole problem. But one uniformity in all religion you will find that every religion says God created the universe, God created the humanity. So you human beings have no power, you have to do nothing, you just fall at my feet, we will resolve your problem. Except in Buddhism, which says that there is no God, there is no soul. You are the problem creator, you are responsible for solving the problem. So that's a different philosophy altogether. But the rest of the religion, all religions say, you leave the matter to the God. The more faith you have in the God's power, it's better for you to resolve your problem issue. And again, going back to the same thing, unfortunately, there is no commonality among gods in terms of what is right and what is wrong. A religion may say, whatever I have said, that is the final. You go and propagate world over, God will bless you. Another religion says, no, whatever I have said, that is the final. Go and spread this news. That is the will of the God. No, you don't follow others. So in this kind of advocacy of what God wants human being to do, conflict is naturally inevitable. And we have to live together with a different faith, different basis of understanding of who God is, what He wants. Obviously, we cannot live together. We cannot rely on each other, because my job is to say that your God is bad, and your job is to say my God is bad. How can we live in peace? How can we of help to each other? So the more you rely on what your religion says, I'm not referring to any particular religion. Every religion has this problem. When you have to listen to your God, we do not know what God said, but we have been told this is what God has said, and that applies to all religions. Obviously, we will not be able to live together as a peaceful citizens of this country. So then what do you do? Your religion, if you want to follow. But that if the religion can come to an extent to tell me that other religions are bad, only your religion is good, then that is the beginning of the danger for our peaceful coexistence. And we have to live with this kind of an understanding that my religion is good, other religion is not good. Obviously, you are pushing immense amount of pressure on others who do not follow what you follow in terms of religion. So that means you are subjecting a huge mass of people into a perpetual tension. And if you happen to be a very, very powerful person, in terms of the number of people who follow what you follow, in terms of the money and muscle power that the people follow what you follow, obviously the other group will feel highly intimidated, and they will definitely have a kind of a anxiety. What will happen to me if I go and approach that person? Whether way I get eliminated or if I get abuses. So you are in fact causing immense amount of pressure, which will definitely affect his mental health. But if you look at again back inward, that what I advocate as the best one, is it really a best one? Can a prayer solve our inter Pakistan, Indo-Pakistan relation, or the problem that we face in Kashmir? Can prayer solve the problem? If prayer can solve the problem, you don't have to send army to Kashmir. You can send your God. Probably you can send all our gods to the Kashmir border and see whether we can win the war. We all know that that's not possible. I don't want to say God have no power, but unfortunately, even in Corona time, God has disappeared. No God comes to rescue us. We are all confined to home. We are scared of Corona.
Professor Ramaya,
we are not scared of God, but we are very scared of Corona.
Professor Ramaya.
Yeah.
So, sorry for interrupting. We only have about 4 or 5 minutes left. I would if you just start talking about mental health, inclusive mental health, and what you found in your studies with let's say Dalits and other sort of.
I'm coming to the point.
Yeah. Please. Thank you.
So obviously, when the source of mental ill health comes from our faith, our caste, our ethnicity, our identity. And if we have to resolve this issue, that people with certain identity face discrimination, indignity, what should be our approach? Should we approach these people, the victims of identity, to tell them, okay, because you are a woman, you are facing problem, so you should dress up properly, not this way. A transgender, you are not an accepted gender, so you have no space. Maybe you should dress up like this. Maybe you talk in this way. Maybe you don't do this thing in public, or this has to be done in private. Or there are many things that we, in the so-called the dominant understanding of how human beings should behave. If you go in those lines, probably in a moral equality perspective, we are not doing the right thing. So what is the right thing they need to do, so that the tension, anxiety the people suffer from because of the kind of identity they shoulder, then you used to focus on people who perpetrate, people, not people facing discrimination, but people causing discriminations. Our focus should be on those who cause discrimination, those responsible for discrimination. Maybe organization like Belong or many other people working on those areas should identify people and work with those people who are actually responsible for subjugating huge vast population into a lot of vulnerabilities and anxieties, all those things. Maybe we need to work. Article 51A of the Constitution clearly says promote scientific temper, but then people get killed. It is a constitutional obligation of every citizen to promote scientific temper. Article 51A lists few such obligations of every citizen. Maybe we need to look at Article 51A, particularly Section F, which clearly says that we need to bring harmony among people. We need to promote scientific temper among people. And maybe organizations should get into those kind of a thing, and their contribution should be made. The studies have done that clearly shows that people, the so-called scheduled castes or Dalits, are very much interested in interacting with everybody. But the so-called non-Dalits have problem in interacting with them. But unfortunately, we tend to focus on Dalits. No, your dress is not good. You are not good at studies. You have to do this. So our entire focus happened to be on the victim, which is a good thing. But we tend to ignore those who perpetrate crimes as if it is none of their fault. So I think there's where NGOs should focus. Focus should be also on people who cause discrimination rather than focusing only on people facing discrimination. That is the one point I want to say, that identity should not be a problem, but those causing problem because of certain identity, our focus should be on such people, whatever identity they may belong. The Kashmiri Pandits in Kashmir, they become a minority, they face problems. And so, if you look at the other state, there others face problems. So somewhere it is a serious thing. We need to focus entire energy, if at all we want to contribute positively for the development of the nation, we must focus all our energies and intelligence to bring changes in the mind of people who cause discrimination, people who commit crimes and atrocities. And that's what I like to see.
Thank you, Professor. Thanks very much. So we've got maybe time for one or two questions. So if you don't mind, Professor, I have a question.
Yes, please.
In your experiences as at TISS, how have you? Do you think there's a wide research community within India that looks at the intersection of mental health and identity? What has your experience been just interacting with other researchers who focus on this theme?
See, there is hardly any research on this line. That mental health, the way probably I wrote a paper on that, and probably what you are looking at, this is the most important area of research required, because we went to think mental health generally is a problem of individuals triggered because of certain traumatic experience individual goes through. But that is not the case. Mental health is affected because also of the identity they come from and the tension caused because of the kind of identity they shoulder, which is a completely an ignored area, which needs actually a serious thinking and research in those areas. How identity is a problem for people and what kind of a mental tension it causes to. And why, the general understanding, once you are educated, you will be able to deal with all issues correctly. But even the educated cause a lot of discriminations. And that is even I read that Ignited Mind, a book by our late President, Mr. Abdul Kalam, which says when we launched the rocket, we were not sure. So every one of us, we were reading our religious text. Irrespective of religion, everybody is looking at the text, praying to God, please see that our rocket launches its desired location. So we as Indians, we have a lot of faith still in that we don't rely more on science, but we tend to rely more on religion and what religion contributes more on supernatural power. And that causes much of our problem. Maybe we need to use our thinking mind to decide on everything rather than putting religion and our religious faith on every decisions, and that can be dangerous for future. This is the research area completely unresearched. We need to do a lot of research.
Okay, great. I think we have a few more questions, but we might have time just for one. So I'm just going to take the prerogative to choose one from the 3 or 4 questions we have. So Shivangni asks, please throw more light on the relationship between victims and perpetrators in the context of transgender people. How can we do more effective mental health initiatives? How can we carry out more effective mental health in this area, specifically around transgender people?
Yeah. See, the transgender category, I have to agree my ignorance in this field, because like most of us, this is a new area, there is hardly any research done. But that very identity, people don't recognize it because we don't get to know. Sex education, we are talking about, even there, I don't know to what extent this transgender category is being actually focused on. We need to read more on that. And our general day-to-day interaction, we don't use that term at all, because even I myself have experienced when it's not with a conscious mind you ignore transgender, but we are not used to it. So generally say male, female, that's all. And we tend to ignore them. Then it takes time for you to realize there is also yet another category. So maybe I am also learning in that process. Obviously, when even male, female as 2 categories, the transgender is yet another category. Within that, there are multiple categories. This is a new domain which needs a lot of research, and academic institution needs to focus on. But unfortunately, religion says this is not a category you should recognize. Since we are religious-minded people, by and large, 90%, we don't recognize. So again, that it becomes a problem for you to question religion. I'm not saying any religion, don't mistake me. It's not wrong. Basically, because almost all religions do not recognize transgender. There comes a problem. They play very, very, very occasional role, say they don't exist. So that is an area we all need to focus on it and to do due justice to transgender community.
All right. Thank you so much for speaking today, Professor. We are really grateful and glad that you could come on and share your insights with us.